Script to Radiant Relationship Tutorial number 4. Understanding Zones in Black Ops 3. This tutorial will assume you know the basics about zoning already. I'm going to cover why you're setting up your KVPs in Radiant and vaguely cover what is happening in the scripts, so you have a better understanding of how zoning works. First, let's look at all the factors involved in zoning. In Radiant, we have our volume and spawners and our barriers that activate the next zone. In our volume, we have our zone name, which is the target name. They target the spawners, which have some other spawning KVPs. And then the barriers have a script flag KVP. In scripts, we have two things. We have the initial zones that are active when the map begins, and we have the function that handles the adjacent zones with the zone manager add adjacent zone line. The add adjacent zone typically has three arguments: your first zone, your second zone, and the flag that activates these zones. Let's go to the zone manager to look at this function. This function makes zone B adjacent to zone A, and if one way is false, zone A is also made adjacent to zone B. In a function, you'll see that if not is defined one way, its default is false. So by not including it one way, it automatically becomes false and makes each adjacent to each other. Typically, one way is never defined or never true because our zones go both ways. In a situation where you could only travel one direction in a zone, say a cliff or something, and you couldn't get back up that cliff, you'd want to make this one-way argument true. So from here, it runs some other functions that set up these zones as adjacent to each other. It gathers the spawners that are targeted by each zone, and it waits for the flag to be set before it activates them. After the flag is set, the zones are activated, and the spawners are allowed to be chosen from when the player is within two adjacent zones. So here's my simple layout. I have multiple zones. My start zone connects to zone C, and the door I have script flag start zone C. Start zone, zone C. There's my start zone, my zone C, and my script flag start zone, zone C. When I open this door, the script will set this flag, and because of my add adjacent zone line, right here, start zone, zone C, start zone, zone C, it will activate these zones if they're not already activated. And this is what you end up with. When I open that door, I set the flag that made this zone active and adjacent to the starting zone. You'll notice that the zombies are spawning the whole way across this zone, and even in the adjacent zone that I just came from. Now, if you wanted the zombies to spawn closer for some reason, maybe the zone is too large or long, or the adjacent zones are too far away, or for whatever reason, you want the zombies to spawn closer in this area. Increasing the number of spawn points will increase your odds of it spawning closer, but it won't restrict them from spawning further away at all. You can get the zombies to spawn closer and restrict them from spawning further away by adding more zones or splitting a zone up. So what I'm going to do is turn one zone into several zones. So I'm going to take zone C here. I'm going to make it smaller. And it still targets all these structs, so let me get rid of these. Okay. And I'm going to make this easier for myself. And I'm just going to use auto targeting. Okay, so the reason I can use auto targeting rather than the zone name and underscore spawners is because in the scripts that's what it looks for to gather the spawners. It gets an array of structs of the target of the zone. So now I'll just copy this. Next to that one. I'm pressing space to copy. And there we go. So they all do say zone C. So let's just add a 1 to the end. Zone 2, zone C3. C4. Okay, so now I've split this area into 5 separate zones. In doing so, I've moved the actual zone that's adjacent to my start zone is now zone C2. So in my script, start zone, zone C2, it's going to be adjacent. I also need to make each of these zones adjacent to each other. So that's going to be start zone C through 4. Zone C is adjacent to zone C1. Zone C1 is adjacent to 2. 2 is adjacent to 3. And 3's adjacent to 4. Now I can leave it just like that. And when I enter this room and activate zone C2, it will activate each of these as well. But in my map, I can actually come from zone D as well. So if I were to leave that way, I'd have to copy this and add the exact flag for zone D to each one of these. And then if I had a third entry, I'd have to do it again. And I don't want to do that. Luckily, in Black Ops 3, we can add more than one flag in the script flag KBP. So I can make this zone C's. and I can add that to each of my script flag by saying comma zone Cs. Now the reason we can do that is because in the blocker script it gets the script flag and it tokenizes it by comma delimiters and sets each token or each flag. So now instead of having that like that, zone Cs. So I'm going to link that, compile, and link that actually. So here we are in game. I'm in my start zone. And now we'll watch them spawn. And they're no longer spawning across the room. They're not spawning in the previous start zone over there. They're only spawning in these 2 or 3 zones over here. As I move over from zone to zone, you'll see they continue to spawn in adjacent zones. This one will spawn in start zone back there, and so on. One thing that I showed you in the beginning was the initial zone array, and you'll notice here you have init zone 0 equals start zone. That's what you'll find in every map named GSC. I've added another pap zone. In my map I have my start zone, but then in this corner I have what I call a pap zone, which is just something I set up to show you how this works. So pap zone has its own spawners, and pap zone is named there, and it's added to the init zones array. That array is then passed into the manage zones function over in the zone manager. What that's gonna do is activate these zones initially at the start of the game. They won't be adjacent to each other. They won't be adjacent to anything else, and unless we set a flag here later that includes one, they'll just be activated. So as always, the start zone is active, and they'll spawn in the start zone. And if I go over to the pap zone, they will only spawn in here. And you'll see they're no longer spawning over in the start zone. And when I leave over there, they stop spawning in that zone. But initially they're active. As you see, I'm not dying. And that's it. I hope you have a better understanding of how zoning works and how the scripts and Radiant relate. Let me know if there's any questions.